Hi, everybody. I just want to share some further insights about relationships, Venus and Mars, and more specifically, Venus being a morning star at the moment. And the reason I decided to bring this up, because as I keep, I suppose, reflecting and looking at things, I just get more um, moments of insights that come to me. So at the moment, Venus is at 25 Gemini, still squaring Mars, still squaring the moon's nodal axis. Mars is conjunct the south node. I've spoken about all of this already in depth and detail. The videos are on my channel if you haven't seen them. But I think it's important and well worth bringing into this story, especially while the sun is in Leo and Mercury is retrograde in Leo. We're just sort of at the beginning of the Leo season, as it's commonly phrased these days. Um, the Venus star point, at the moment, she is a morning star. She's in Gemini, but her cycle is the morning star cycle, which began on the equinox on the 23rd of March of 2025. Now, the morning star Venus is also known as Ishtar of Akkad. Now, Akkad is a city or was a city in Mesopotamia. And so Ishtar of Akkad was the primary divinity of that particular city in Mesopotamia. And she was a goddess of fertility and war, just as we know Venus to be. And she was actually more like a male type of divinity versus being, a typical female. The female version of her is the Venus evening star. So at the moment, Venus is a morning star, which is also the goddess Pallas Athena. So it's Ishtar of Akkad, who was the primary divinity of that particular city. She was the divinity of the emperor leader of the time called Sargon. Sargon, I've just forgotten his name. Sargon, yes, Sargon. So he had her on his side during his well, one might call it invasion, one might call it victory, whatever you want to call it. But basically, he ended up, claiming a lot of land during that time, and it was with the assistance of Ishtar of Akkad. Now, her primary animal, this is what led me to discussing this today, is a lion. So when you see Ishtar of Akkad, I'll just show you a picture actually. Just close a couple of tabs here. Just bear with me. Okay, so if you look at this picture here in particular, this is the actual depiction of the goddess Venus, known as Ishtar of Akkad, back in Mesopotamia. There it is on the bottom. You can see it says Ishtar on an Akkadian sill. And if you look to the left, she's got her foot and her leg on the back of the lion. She's holding some type of instrument in her hand there as well, connecting to the lion. And the lion is roaring. So the lion is her primary archetypal, symbolic, literal animal that acted as a protector for her. And at the moment, we are, as I said, in Leo season. The star Sirius also corresponds to this position of, well, Venus being a morning star, because she corresponds to Ishtar of Akkad, whose animal was the lion, and the bow in the star Sirius, that particular zone is actually basically totally connected to the Venus morning star, to Ishtar of Akkad. So there's a lot of alignments, in other words, all coming together at the moment whilst Venus is in her morning star journey, which is Ishtar of Akkad. We have this Sun in Leo, right? We have Mercury retrograde in Leo. Later on, Jupiter and the Sun in Cancer will end up being in the tropical pardon me, what am I saying? That they will end up passing over Sirius. Um, and what I was thinking was that because I've spoken a lot about this new moon in Leo, which was just a couple of days ago, as being a very big cycle connecting to relationships. And as I spoke about it yesterday, it's the new moon in Leo was conjunct I've just forgotten how to pronounce her name. Eurydice, whatever it was. I've just forgotten how to pronounce it in English. Thank you to that person who wrote it in Greek, by the way, underneath the video. So that particular divinity, who was the wife of Orpheus, and I explained the story about them in the new moon video. Point being that the new moon cycle and the current Venus-Mars square all points to matters of relationships. And the Venus-Mars square began at a conjunction with Pluto in February of 2024. So the point is that when Venus is a morning star and she's Ishtar of Akkad, she's a very, very powerful divinity, and it is said that she's not swayed by the arrows of Eros, whereas the Venus evening star, she's all about relationships and love and all the manipulative crap that can go on with that as well, and is very easily swayed by the arrows of Eros. Now, it is said that the Venus morning star is much more stable in relationships. She's much more clear about what she wants, and she has no hesitation in going for what she wants. She doesn't hum and ha about it. She's pretty focused, loyal, dedicated in her mission. She's a goddess of wisdom, that is Pallas Athena, morning star, and she's a goddess of ingenious ideas and crafts and techniques, and she has an ability to get herself out of really complicated and tricky or hairy situations. She's just a very powerful goddess of wisdom, and she transmits that type of wisdom and energy, if you like, into her approach of relationships. So that's what's going on here. Now, the backstory is that the Venus-Mars-Pluto conjunction, which kicked off in February 2024, activated a very fated portal relative to relationships. And as we've moved along from February 2024 to now, we have Venus and Mars in a last quarter square. So there's some challenging pieces, themes that are being activated that may have began in 2024 February, or they may have began at a later stage when Mars and Venus were opposite each other, for example, which was, I think, from memory, I think it was about December of 2024, somewhere around there, which once again, I have unpacked the whole cycle in complete depth and detail in another video. But today's focus is merely to bring to your attention that in amongst all these relationship issues that are so loud at the moment and so prominent in so many ways, and I will say this as well, which somebody mentioned this underneath one of my, I think it was underneath the Mars Venus video, and they just said something like, it's also about our own masculine and feminine energy, and they were very right in saying that. And it's Celeste, hi Celeste, if you're listening. So, if it is the case that you are not in an actual, I mean, look, we're all in some type of relationship, aren't we? Really, at the end of the day, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a personal, intimate, sexual relationship, or whether it's just the relationships we have with anybody in our life. A relationship is a relationship. You can't define a relationship in one single way or one single term. You know, we have relationships with our pets, with our family, with our friends, with the local, you know, grocery owner. This is all relating. When we are communicating and sharing and exchanging in some type of way, that's called relating, which is where the word relationship, you know, basically comes from. But we are relating with people, and that's what Venus is primarily about. She is the principle of attraction and relating and relationship. So the point here is that all these relationship themes that are being powerfully activated with the relationship between Mars and Venus, the Sun in Leo, the new moon in Leo, which was opposite Pluto, brings in a volume of intensity that is, undeniable. And we just need to translate this to our own personal circumstances. Now, going back to the point of our own inner masculine and feminine energies, which exist in all of us, regardless of gender, then we can also look at this work, if you like, or this energy or these passages as a process that we are going through internally with ourselves in terms of, I guess, trying to find the harmony and the balance between our own inner masculine and feminine expressions and ways of life. A woman expresses her Mars in different ways, and she expresses her Venus in different ways, and likewise for men. And then there's the matter of projecting. A woman might project the Mars onto the men, and the man is likely to project the Venus onto women. So there are multiple layers in play here. And it really just comes down to you, where you are at in your life path, how much awareness you have, self-awareness about your own matters and themes and your own inner feminine and masculine, how much awareness you have around what's being projected. Typically we project unconsciously. So for the most part, we're not aware of what we project. We just see it in another person. And when we see it, we go, aha, so that person has that thing that I desire, or that person has that thing that I really like, or that person has that thing that I really fucking hate. It can be either or. It's not all, sweetness. It can be a mixture of things. And when we are talking about Mars and Venus being square each other, that is such a dynamic aspect that does speak to really intense, conflicting, passionate desires, that could create a lot of conflict or inner turmoil, and particularly inward turmoil here is an appropriate term to the last quarter square, because the conflict here in the last quarter square is it can be connected to action, but it's traditionally more connected to our own inner thinking, our own ideas. And what's our own inner thinking and ideas connected to here? It's connected to our whole perception and mindset of relationships, of what we desire and of what we need. Desire Mars, what we need Venus. And that can be entangled in our current relationships in various forms and ways, depending on where this energy may be playing out in your life. Of course, that will also come from where Mars and Venus are transiting in your own birth chart. So, there's multiple layers here. But once again, circling back to the main point, Venus being a morning star through this intense process of what began with Mars and Pluto and Venus all together. And Venus has been a morning star since March. She's coming through in this cycle with a lot of passion, but a lot of wisdom as well. And I think, it's fair to say that she's really not going to take a lot of shit. The Venus morning star, you know, just imagine her as Pallas Athena. Where is my... So let's just go to a quick image of Pallas Athena just to draw your imagination. So there's multiple pictures, but anyway, let's just choose. Let me see, let me see. Um, I kind of like the traditional pictures, but I really do love this picture actually. Yeah, and it's on Facebook, so we don't really want that. But if we can just, God, that's a funny looking picture of whoever that is. Anyway, I just want you to uh, just see this picture here. I mean, obviously, this is a modern, artistic creation of Pallas Athena, but I bring this up because I like that she's holding that spear, right? And then she's holding the shield with the Gorgon Medusa. Okay. So she's a goddess that really just takes no shit. She's she's holding the shield of Medusa. I've unpacked that story in multiple videos, so I'm not going to go back to that again. But I bring up that picture just to, to stimulate your imagination, to help you connect to where Venus is at the moment. That's where she is. She's in that position. Here's another way to look at it. This is Roman's graph once again. So this is Venus's cycle. And what I mean by that is there's the sun in the center, and this is Venus traveling around. Okay. The Earth is down here, well, right down here, down the bottom. And if you look to the right-hand side, this is where we are. This is Venus's cycle right now. Okay. She was retrograde. She became the morning star. Okay. Um, through her retrograde process. That is, that she was retrograde and formed a conjunction to the sun on the 23rd of March and became the morning star. Can you see the Leo lion depiction over here? This is showing us that, and Isis as well, and Pallas Athena and Ishtar of Akkad, all these divinities correspond to the Venus morning star. And when where are we now? What month are we? July. So we're somewhere around here. She's somewhere in this vicinity over here. And, in a few months' time, she's going to become what's called the morning last. And then she's going to go into this territory up here. And I'm going to come back to speak to that. But here's the divinities that correspond to the Venus morning star. So, as I said before, Venus is square Mars. There's a very complex entanglement going on between the two of them at the moment. They are in touch with the moon's nodes. And as I said in my new moon video, the node of Venus is on Mars and the node of Mars is on Venus. The planets themselves have north nodes and south nodes. Venus is a morning star. So she's moving through this cycle, even though there is definitely quite a fated element to this story of what's playing out. And I can certainly vouch for that in my own life because I've had something come up in this way with this whole Venus, Mars, Pluto thing. It's been incredibly intense and it hasn't been easy. I'm not going to lie about it. Very testing, very, very testing, but very interesting in learning as well, about myself and different things like that. And each of us can have that experience in our own way, and we are indeed. But I think with Venus being the morning star, just remember that because of the Leo season and the Leo energy, and Venus being the morning star at the moment, and the lion is her primary animal that supports her in her victories. And that reminds me, incidentally, another thing that I located, which was super interesting. Um, there's a Greek coin that, let me just find my notes about that because it is very, very interesting. Okay, so there's a gold coin of Alexander the Great, and the image on his headpiece is actually on one side it's Pallas Athena, and on the other side is the divinity um, called Nike, which in Greek is Nike, which means victory. Now there's an asteroid called Nike or Nike, however you want to pronounce it. And guess where she is? Uh, okay, so it's here. There. Look at her. She's at 20 Virgo. She's the goddess of victories. Okay. Where does 20 Virgo place her at the moment? She's right there on the south node and with Mars and squaring Venus. So it like the reason that's important is because Nikki was connected to Pallas Athena as well, because Pallas Athena was a goddess of victory in all situations of war. She's the goddess of strategy of war, and she was victorious in all her battles. And the goddess, there's actually an image, let me see if I can find it, of Pallas Athena holding actually Um, she's holding Nikki in her hand. There it is. You see that? You see this picture here? Story of Nike and the Greek goddess of victory. So here's Pallas Athena, and that's Nikki. She's holding her up in her hand. So that tells us that these divinities are intrinsically connected. Right now, as I speak, Nikki is over here on the south node. So no, and let's not look at this from an egotistical personality bullshit level. I'm going to win in this fight. I'm going to win in this situation with this person. I'm going to have power over them. If you're going at it in that way, well, forget about it. Good luck to you. That's just bullshit. It's juvenile, right? We've got to grow out of that shit. This new moon opposite Pluto and this whole complex relationship between Venus and Mars is giving us an opportunity to really grow out of old patterns emotionally, with our relationships, our relationship patterns and behaviors. And I think we can have victory in that really positive way when we actually deal with our own inner darkness and inner demons and inner complexities that really trouble us, that we may attract in relationships and partners and situations, and they just become the mirror of what we still need to fucking work on. Just putting it very simply. So that's an extra addition to all the stuff that's going on with the new moon in Leo, opposite Pluto, conjunct the asteroid Eurydice, who was married to Orpheus, and that was a tragic love story. And the primary theme that I wanted to bring to people's attention about that was that whatever's going on at the moment with relationships, there's big core issues around trust. And trust, let's face it, is a big problem in many relationships because, well, it's very simple. In let me just try and get this chart in a way that, okay, imagine, we'll just look at this chart, right? Never mind the date and where everything is and blah, blah, blah. All I want you to look at is Aries on the ascendant. All right, that's the beginning of the wheel. Now, when you go into the fifth house, this is where you have all your love affairs. This is where you might meet somebody that you have chemistry with, that you have a lot of fun with, that you go out and party with, that you just have sex with, have a good time with, whatever, have drinks with, get high with, whatever it is you enjoy doing, each to their own. The seventh house, which is Libra, this is where the relationship might begin. Things start to get a little bit defined here, and there can be problems here. Don't worry about that because Libra brings in all the opposites from Aries. It's like, well, what do I want, Aries? And who's this other person and what do they want and need? So then all these differences and stuff come up and you got to work out, well, is this a relationship for me? That's where you start to work all that shit out. And then when you go into Scorpio territory, well, that's where you might see a person's soul if they let you. That's what I love saying about the eighth house. And that's where you do all your deep private soul work as well. So relative to, where was I? Let me just think. Um, I've just lost why I brought that up. Yeah, okay. Can I think I need Apollo to come and give me a hand here. I've just lost my train of thought. What was it? What was it? Let me just keep going with some other things. Perhaps it'll come back. So I mentioned also in the new moon video that, the full moon coming up in a couple of weeks' time is going to be quite profound. And I'll tell you from now and I'll come back and unpack it later. But see Pallas Athena at 18 degrees of Aquarius, retrograde. Well, Pallas Athena connects to the Venus morning star, which is where Venus is at the moment in her current cycle. She's the morning star. So every time you're looking at Venus transiting through the chart when she's a morning star, it's very worthy to note what Pallas Athena is doing. Now, they're actually trying each other at the moment, which is pretty great. The trine is separating though. Venus was trying her a lot more closely several days ago. But at the full moon's going to be conjunct Pallas Athena. So that's going to be very, very interesting. Now, I still can't seem to recollect what I was going to say about Scorpio and the current things. Look, if I remember, I'll just put it in the comments section. I'm sure I will. It's just escaped me at this very moment. So in summary, once again, I guess the thing that I really, yes, that's right. I was just simply saying that when it comes to relationships, as I mentioned, things kick off in the fifth and they work out to get to a different stage and level in the seventh. And then when we get to the eighth, that's when we experience a person's soul if they allow us, or they experience our soul if we allow them. And what I was trying to say was that these matters of projection and complexities that we may be experiencing in relationships at the moment with the different types of people we've attracted or different encounters we're having, that's right. Scorpio is where trust, thank you, bing, there it is. The matter of trust is so huge because of Eurycide being conjunct the new moon in Leo. Sorry if I've jumped around a bit in the last couple of minutes. Hopefully you're able to follow. But basically what I was trying to do was trying to explain that because of the theme of trust being so strong in the new moon in Leo, which is a cycle that lasts for 4 weeks, right? The lunation cycle is a 4-week cycle. Now that theme of trust that came up very strongly because of that asteroid being conjunct the new moon. What I wanted people to understand about that is that trust is a problem and is such a big deal because it corresponds to the 8th house, which is Scorpio. And that's why I just showed you a chart a moment ago with the natural order of the zodiac showing you where Scorpio naturally resides in the 8th house, because that is the area where our trust will be broken because the matter of betrayal, okay, emanates from the 8th house. Any type of betrayal. So, the matter of trust and betrayal is quite huge in these current energies. And, look, the new moon was opposite Pluto. Okay. And Pluto rules the Scorpio house. So matters of trust and betrayal belong to the 8th house, Scorpio and Pluto. And I just think this is going to be a massive test for us, both in being able to trust our own heart and our own self, our own desires, our own intentions, being more aware of where we are projecting this energy, what we are projecting it on. What's the motivation and desire behind it? Are we able to see that and be really brutally honest about why we have pursued this or that or the other, or this person or that person? What's the motive behind it? Can we be really brutally honest with ourselves? That's the key factor here. That's what can break that spell of feeling a sense of betrayal by others. Nobody can really betray us if we don't allow it. I know that's a hard pill to swallow because there is this element in just kind of everyday life where somebody does something shitty and yeah, it absolutely fucking feels like a betrayal. But if you unpack that story, that experience, and go deeper into yourself and see it from within your own self, you'll find some answers and some insights to you that are much more powerful than the actual external experience that has come about that is appearing as betrayal. And I think that's the overall test here with these energies. Really fucking powerful shit, guys. Really, really powerful. And I speak about this very passionately and very personally because these energies have taken me through that portal and I've had to face all this shit that I'm telling you about. So, Pallas Athena, Venus morning star, very powerful. She will not tolerate BS. She just doesn't. The new moon in Leo was opposite Pluto. You can't pretend and fake and tolerate BS with the new moon in Leo opposite Pluto. So I'll leave it there and let me know your thoughts, your feelings, your stories, and reach out if you'd like to connect with me. Bye for now.